Hi, I'm Sharon Smith, and in this course you'll learn how to create professional-looking fillable forms in Microsoft Word. You may not realize it, but Microsoft Word is an excellent tool for creating fillable forms with a variety of functionality. In this course, we'll be using the desktop app version of Word for Microsoft 365, and most people have this program readily available, so you won't need any other special software to get started. Whether you're creating a form from scratch or improving an existing template, I'll walk you through each step of the process in a logical order, and by the end of the course, you'll have all the skills you need to create comprehensive forms with ease, even if you have zero experience. So let's dive in and create our form together. I really hope you enjoy this course. Before we get started creating our form, let's take a look at the completed form that we're going to build today. Before we do that, we want to make sure that we have the Developer tab enabled up here on our ribbon. If you don't already see that up there, come up here and right-click on your ribbon, click on Customize Ribbon, and under the Main Tabs area, just make sure that the Developer tab is checked and then click OK. This adds the Developer tab up here so it allows you to have access to all of the form fields that we're going to learn about today. The form we're building today will include multiple level dependent dropdowns where a user selects a location, then selects a filtered drop-down list of departments, and then subsequently sees a filtered drop-down list of managers. We'll also create conditional text to appear based on a user's drop-down selection, so that sections of our form can remain hidden until they're triggered to display. We'll cover how to create repeating form fields, so a user fills in a form field once and it can be repeated elsewhere in the document. We'll program required form fields so users can't bypass a required field. We'll review how to enforce field formatting like phone numbers, and how to program calculating form fields. Then we'll configure a submit button so users can email completed forms back to us as email attachments. Finally, we'll gather and analyze our form results in Excel. Now this is an example of a form that I'm using. It's an interview questionnaire form, and it's just a form that I built that has all of these elements in it on one form so that we can take a look at it, but feel free to use any of these elements on any of your custom forms. Let's get started. Now let's take a quick moment to review the different categories of form fields that you can use when you use Word to create fillable forms. The first is content control form fields. These are the newest control form fields that you're going to see right here as icons on the controls area of your Developer tab. And so there's lots of different form field options under content controls. The main thing that you want to keep in mind is if you do use content controls or legacy form fields or ActiveX, you're going to want to stick with the same form fields throughout your form. When you mix and match, you might run into trouble when you're testing your form or when your users are trying to tab through the form. So content control forms have more options like a picture content control, a date picker, and so if you are just going to save or print your form and you don't need to have any advanced programming, then content controls are a great way to go. However, if you do want to do some more advanced things like forcing required fields and having dependent drop-downs, linking text to appear, some of those advanced features that we're going to create on our form, we're going to want to use legacy forms because we can bookmark those and then program them to do things. Then also we can then save legacy form fields as text files that we can then import that data into Excel, which is what we're going to do toward the end of our lessons here. ActiveX controls do require macros. They're the oldest type of form fields from Microsoft Word. We are going to use the command button, which is an ActiveX, and that's our submit button. So we will cover that in one of our lessons here. Let's take a closer look at the different types of content control form fields if you ever want to build a form with content control form fields. We go up to rich text, we'll just put our cursor there and then come up here. And when you hover over the different icons in the controls area of the Developer tab, you'll see what type of form field it is. So we'll just click on it to insert where we have our cursor. We'll click on over here where we can place the plain text form field. Over here, we'll insert the picture content control. Down here, we're going to insert a checkbox. Over here, we'll insert the combo box. And then here, we'll insert the drop-down list. And then down here, we'll insert the date picker. So these are all the different types of content control form fields that you can use on your form. And again, these are best if you're just going to print or save your form and you don't need to program any advanced features into your form fields. Just so you know that all of the content control form fields have this placeholder text. It's this gray text that automatically defaults. You can change this or hide it. So to hide it, all you have to do is select your form field by clicking on it, go up to the design mode, and when you're in the design mode, it automatically selects that text. You're going to go over to your Home tab, then you're going to pop out the font pop-up window, and you'll notice a box that says Hidden. You can check that box and click OK. And then when you close out of design mode, so we're going to go back in Developer, uncheck design mode, and notice that it hides that placeholder text. So you can hide it. You can also edit it. So over here, if we select this one, all we have to do is go to design mode. It selects the area of the placeholder text, and say we just want it to say enter name. Then we can select that, highlight it, and then our font formatting pops up. If we want that to be light gray still, we can edit that to make it light gray. And then you've edited your placeholder text. So the difference between rich text and plain text, rich text is going to allow you to have some advanced formatting so that when users fill that in, if it's a rich text form field, they can format it different ways, they can insert pictures and have a little bit more functionality than the plain text. But if all you need is for your users to type in text and use multiple paragraphs, they can do that with the plain text form field. Now, the difference between the combo box and the drop-down list, these are very similar form fields. The drop-down list is just what it sounds like. You can program this to have a drop-down list of different items that a user can select from. But with a drop-down list, the user can only pick from those items that you set up for them to select. With the combo box, it's the drop-down list, but it also allows the user to manually type in a different item. So for example, if you want them to be able to type in a different response other than the items that are in the select list, they'll be able to do that if you set it up using the combo box. All right, I'm going to come up here and uncheck design mode so that we can take a look at what this looks like. So for the drop-down list, if we select that and come over here to properties, this is how you'll program your drop-down values. Come down here to the area down here and we can click on add, and this is where you'll add your different select list items. And hit OK, and then you can add another one and click OK. When you're done entering all of the items that you want your users to be able to select from in the drop-down, click OK. Now with the date picker, all you have to do is insert that date picker, and then it automatically shows up with the calendar view that your users can toggle and select the correct date. So there's nothing that you need to program there. With the checkbox, if you check it, it will default with an X to tick the box as selected. If you want to change that, you can select the box, come up to Properties, and then under the checked symbol, you can click on Change. This will bring up a list of items and symbols that you can select from. So maybe we want it to be a check mark instead. We can select that, click OK, and then click OK. Then when we check that box, it'll be a check mark instead of an X. Let's move on to look at legacy form fields and ActiveX form fields. Now let's look at the different types of legacy form fields that you can use. So legacy form fields are up here in the controls area. If you see the briefcase with the tool icon, it's a drop down. It says legacy tools. Go ahead and drop that down and you're going to see a list of legacy form fields and ActiveX controls. So the legacy form fields up here, the three main ones that we're going to use in program today are going to be the text box. So I have my cursor down here in my form. I'm just going to come and insert the legacy text box. And over here, I'm going to place my cursor and we're going to insert the legacy checkbox. And then over here, we're going to place our cursor and insert the legacy drop-down list. The nice thing about legacy form fields, even though you don't have as many different types of form fields as content control form fields, you have the ability to edit the properties of these form fields. So for example, if I select my text box and I come up here and click on properties, I have the ability to set this up as a number or date or even a calculating form field. So that's how we're going to program these when we get into building our form. So it's nice that we're able to do that. We also have the ability to bookmark these fields. We're going to name them something, which means we can reference them in different field code and different macros that call on them to do things. So it's nice that we have these features still in the legacy form fields. All right, I'm going to click OK to close out the properties. One quick thing to show you about legacy tool form fields is when we click on the legacy forms, you'll notice two buttons over here at the end. This one that's called form field shading, this will hide the gray box shading. So if you don't like that and you don't want that to print off when you print your form, all you have to do is click that and it turns off the gray shading on those legacy form fields. All you have to do to turn it back on is click the button again and it turns the gray shading back on. And then you also have this button that will reset your form fields for you. So if you unprotect your form and click that button, it will reset and blank out your form fields for you. So we'll take a look at how that functionality works. The ActiveX control that we're going to use in our training today is the command button. And so all of these do require macros in order to use. So we're going to be using that command button when we program our submit button. Now let's move on to create our actual form from scratch. All right, let's start with a new blank Word document. The first thing we want to do is make sure that based on the layout of your desired form that you have the right layout selected in your page orientation. So we're going to create just a portrait or vertical type of form, so that's what we're going to leave it as portrait. All right, the first thing we want to do is put a header or a title on the top of our form. So we're going to be creating our behavior-based interview questionnaire. So we're going to go ahead and create a text box to fill that in. I'm going to come up to Insert, and I'm going to select Text Box, and I'm going to draw a text box. And I'm just going to draw that anywhere because I can place it wherever I need it. So I'm going to draw it about that big, and we're just going to type behavior-based interview questionnaire. All right, let's go ahead and select that and center it in our text box. And let's make the font bigger. And we're going to expand. And let's update the color. So we're going to right-click and we're going to select Format Shape. And under the fill area, click on a solid fill, and we're going to pick a color. And now if we want to change the text, we can select the text and select white, and we can bold this. All right, so now we have a good little header here. We can actually make sure that we don't want to have a line on here. We can select this. If we come over to text outline, we say no line, that looks good. And then we can move this around wherever we want to place it. Now remember, when you're working in Microsoft Word, when you move things over to the very edge of the border, it's not a design program, so you don't have that bleed functionality. If you were to print this off, it wouldn't necessarily bleed on. But if people are going to open this up electronically to fill it in, you can make it look like it's bleeding off the page there, and that's how we like it to look for this here. So then what we want to do is insert our logo. So all we have to do is come up to Insert, click on Pictures, and say from this device, and then just navigate wherever you have your logo saved. Once you have your logo image inserted, you can resize it, and we're going to change the wrapping. So we are going to size this down, and we're going to right-click and select Wrap Text. And let's put in front of text, and then we can grab it and let's move it where we want to up here on our page in the top right corner. And you can size this and create it just how you want it. All right, now let's go ahead and create the basic outline of our form template. So we know we're going to have different sections, and we want to have tables within there that are going to hold our form fields. So I'm just going to hit Enter and place my cursor down. Notice that these move. I can place these back up where I want them, and we'll move our cursor back down here. So our first table that we're going to insert, I'm going to insert a 3-column table. We want to have today's date and the interview date up here. So we're going to go up to Insert, And I'm going to insert a table, and I'm going to choose 3 columns. And the reason I want to do this is because I want to have a space. I just want the bottom border, so like a line underneath the date, to show up, and I want to have a space in between those. So I'm going to use 3 columns to do that. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually bring my cursor where I can actually move the middle column over like this, and then I'm going to bring the end of this table back in, so I don't need it to go all the way to the end of the page. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is type here today's date, and I'm going to tab over and use this for interview date. All right, I'm going to move this back out just a little bit here to make room. Now I'm going to select the entire table here, and I'm going to click on my borders up here at the top. Notice the table design tab is visible, and under borders, just go over here and click no border. Then come back to borders and then click on, we just want the bottom border. So that's the top option here. And now what I want to do is place my cursor in that middle column and then take the border away from that. And then that makes it appear that there is a space in between those two. And the reason we want to set this up like that is if we were to just draw a line instead of using a table, when we put our form field there and someone types on it, we don't want that line to shift, right? You might have seen that on some of your forms when people just draw lines instead of using tables. What we want to do is place that form field there and have it sit on top of that bottom border, and so that it doesn't move that bottom border when the form field gets filled in. So that's why we set it up that way using tables and just underlining using the bottom border of the table. All right, the next thing we want to do is insert our form field. So we are going to place our cursor where we want the form field. I'm going to hit 2 spaces. We're going to come up to our developer tab and drop down the legacy forms, and we're going to put a text box here, and then same thing, we're going to hit our space twice after our colon and insert a text box there. So we'll come back and make those date fields in just a bit. I'm going to place my cursor down there, and I'm going to hit enter, and then we're going to start our new section, which is candidate information. And if I want, I can go ahead and create all the section headers and format them all the same way that I know I want to. So we'll go ahead and do that. We know we're going to have a candidate information section. We're going to have a vacancy information section. We're going to have a section for a competency selection, a section for our interview questions. Then we're going to have our candidate score and recommendation section. All right, so these are going to be our different form sections. So we can highlight all of these and format them however we want. So if I want these to be bold and underlined, and maybe I want them to be a slightly different text and a little bit bigger font. All right, so now we have all of our sections ready to go, so we can start to build out the rest of our form here. So for the candidate information, we know that we have a table up here where we want to capture the candidate's name, email address, their work preferences, and their phone number. So all we have to do is create our table. We're going to come up to Insert, and we're going to click on Table, and we're going to do a 2x2 table up here. Then if we want to make our table a little bit larger, all we have to do is come over here with our cursor to the bottom right corner and drag it down. And this will expand so that our table is a little bit larger. It'll evenly expand however many rows and columns that you inserted in your table. And so then what we want to do is we can select everything in the table and then align it. Come up to your layout up here. And under the alignment area, if we want this to be in the middle, but center aligned on the left-hand side, what we can do is select that, and then that way the text will appear where we want it to, how we want to have it aligned within that table. So now I'm going to come over here, and this is where we're going to have the candidate name. It's taking on the formatting of our headers, so we don't want that. So let's go ahead back up and change this back to our normal font. And maybe we want this to be 11. So we go back to our home ribbon, we click on 11, and we don't want it to be bold or underlined. So we just select everything and make it like that. So that's going to be our candidate name. And then this is going to be their phone number. And then we've got their email address and then work preference. Okay, I'm going to drag this column over here a little bit because we want a little bit more space for the work preference because we're going to put our checkboxes there. So we know we're going to insert a checkbox, and then we are going to have options for remote, and then we're going to have an option for hybrid, and then an option for on-site. And we'll put our checkboxes in between those in just a minute. So now we've got our section for candidate information. The next section we're going to do is our vacancy information. And on that table, we want to have 2 rows, 2 boxes on the top row, and then 3 boxes on the bottom row. So I am going to go ahead and create the first box with a table with 2 boxes. And we are going to expand that just a little bit to make it even with the other. Select that and make the alignment the same. And we want to make sure that we take off the formatting. All right, and here's where we're going to have job title, and we're going to have requisition number. Now what we want to do is place a row right beneath that has 3 boxes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place my cursor right below and hit enter. I'm going to come back up to insert. I'm going to select my table and select the 3 boxes. And then I'm going to just place my cursor here and hit delete, and that will bring it up together. And so now we have the same table of data, but we have 3 boxes on the bottom row there that we want. So let's go ahead and adjust this. And let's move our borders out to match. And then we can move these in and adjust these how we want. So we know we're going to have location, department, and manager. These are going to be our dependent drop downs. So we want these to be fairly even, and that looks pretty good. So this is going to be our location, and then we're going to have department and manager. So again, let's fix the formatting on those. And I'm going to add my colons in here. All right, for the competency selection area, this is where we're going to list a couple of competencies. Just for the sake of ease on this form, I just included 3. There might be multiple things that you would include here. But for this one, we just used commitment, communication, and decision making. So I'm just going to write that down here. And let's go ahead and reformat the rest of these areas. I'm going to hold control in my mouse, and I'm going to take off that special formatting that we did for our headers, move it back to the normal font that we want to use. So now what we're going to do is add a box where we're going to take away the borders and just leave the inside vertical borders. So let's go up to Insert and click on Table, and we're going to insert 3 different boxes here, and we're going to say our first one is commitment. Hit tab. Our next one is communication, and hit tab, and our last one is decision making. Let's highlight this table here by clicking it. Come up to your borders and say no border, and then come back up here, and then you're going to select inside vertical, and that is going to give you these lines in here that will break up the sections there. So you could do this if you had multiple rows that you wanted to do. It would look like a single line that would go down the vertical interior line of your table. All right, so this is where we're going to put a couple of our drop down items in just a minute. All right, for the interview questions section. Now, this is a section that we want to build. We're going to build it out in our form, but then what we're going to do is actually hide it unless it's only going to appear unless we want it to, unless a user selects for that box to appear. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and build it out so that it will look like all of the options are on the form. And we're going to use that in our field code. So we're going to get to that lesson in a little while, but just so you know, we'll build it out out here so you'll see what it looks like. So I want to build out a table here that is going to include 2 rows at the top and 1 row at the bottom. I can just build a 2 by 2 and then merge the bottom row. So I'm going to drag that out, and I'll format the alignment, go up to layout, align that on the left center, and this is going to be my box for competency. And I'm going to drag this over here. And this is where I'm going to type out the question that I want to pop up so that the interviewer will know what question to ask when they select that particular competency. I happen to have that saved on another document, so I'm just going to copy and paste that in here. All right, now I'm going to reformat this. I'm going to make this bold. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. And we're going to change the color of this particular cell. So to do that, just highlight the cell. And when this pops up, click on your fill icon and select the color that you want to use as the fill. And then you can change the font color as well. So that's how you would edit just a single cell within a table. Now what we want to do is merge these bottom cells. So we're going to say merge cells. And we're going to keep the alignment on that one as left center aligned. And we're just going to expand this box out. And this is where a user will be able to type information in. So maybe this one we want to have aligned up at the top. So we can do that. And then up here, we're just going to type response notes and comments. And we'll make this bold. And then we'll hit enter. And then down here, we'll make sure that the cursor is not bold so that when a user does type in, it'll just be normal font. All right, let's go ahead and create these boxes for the 2 additional competencies that we want to have on our form. To do that, I'm just going to select the box up here on the left, hit Control-C to copy. I'm going to place my cursor down here at the end, hit enter, hit Control-V. And the next one is going to be communication. I'm going to select the box, hit Control-C to copy, and come down here and hit Control-V to paste. And then the last one is going to be decision making. All right, now for the candidate score section, we are just going to put down here the 3 competencies that we have. It's going to be competency 1, 2, and 3. And then the overall score. And down here in the recommendation section, we're just going to put a few items, the interviewer's name. I'm going to reformat this real quick. And it's going to be the candidate name and any additional notes. All right, so one quick thing I want to do is I actually want these prompt items to be in bold. So I'm going to go through and just make these bold here. I'm going to scroll up. Same thing on these items. I just want all of these to be in bold. And we'll format the form fields so that they're not in bold. All right, so now let's go ahead and insert the form fields that we're going to use on our form. So for candidate name, we are going to hit space and we are just going to uncheck bold here. We're going to go up to our developer tab and we're going to check the legacy form and insert the text field. And then same thing for phone number. We're going to insert a text field for phone number and email. And then we're going to put checkboxes for the different work preference items. So we'll want to put our cursor here and select our checkbox. And we'll place our cursor there, hit enter and place a checkbox. And then for on-site, we'll place our checkbox. All right, so we've got our checkboxes there. We've got text form fields up here. We want to put text form fields for both the job title and requisition number. So we're going to insert those. And now for location, let's go ahead and add in the location department and manager are going to be drop downs. So we're going to go ahead and place our cursor where we want that drop down and select the drop down option. So it's going to look like a text box, but it's actually the drop down box. So the properties are going to be different on those. And same thing down here, we're going to use the drop-down boxes for the different competency areas. So we're just going to place our cursor and put the drop-down lists for those. Now all we have to do is scroll down to the bottom, and we're going to add text boxes under the candidate score area. So we're just going to say colon, space, space, and then come up and add a text box here. And I'm going to select that, and I'm going to select it just by clicking it. I'm going to hit Control C, and I'm going to just paste that down here for the other areas. And then down here under the overall candidate score. And then I'm also going to place one down here for the interviewer name. I'm going to leave candidate name blank. That's where we're going to put a repeating form field later. And then I will put one down here under notes so that users can fill in notes at the bottom. Now that we have our form template created with all of the form fields inserted, we're going to move on to other lessons where we're going to be able to program some neat features into the properties of our form fields. Let's take a look. Now let's take a look at how we can enforce some form field formatting. We want to do this with the numbers up here. So a good example is the phone number field. A lot of times people are typing in really quickly. They might just type the number, they might type dots, they might type hyphens, and we want to have that consistently formatted. So that's a good option that we can do. So if we come up to our phone field up here, we can select it, and we're going to come up to properties. We are going to make this a type number, and then under number format, you'll notice that in the drop down there's lots of different formats that we can use. There's one for currency, just a regular number, percentage, and so we want this to be formatted a specific way for a phone number. So we're going to just type parentheses, and then we're going to use the hashtag to represent the number characters. So it would be 3 numbers inside the parentheses, a space, then 3 numbers, hyphen, and 4 numbers. And that's the typical format of a US phone number, and that's what we'll put there, and we'll go ahead and click OK. Now let's format a date field. So for the interview date, we can select that field, come up to the properties, and we're going to drop down and select date. And then under date format, we can select a particular format that we want the date to be formatted, and then click OK. And so then we have a field for today's date. Now there is a way that you can program to insert the current date every time someone opens the document. If you want to do that, we can actually select the form field and delete that, and then come up to our Insert tab, and then come over to Date and Time. And then we can select the format that we want to use. So if we want to use the United States formatting, it would be 4323. Maybe that's how we want it formatted. We can say update automatically. We can check that to make sure that the current date will always populate when someone opens the document, and then click OK. And so it will always have today's date open on there. So you may or may not want to have that feature, but that's how you would insert that. Now let's quickly test our form and see how this works. So to do that, we're going to come up to our Developer tab. We're going to click on Restrict Editing. Now this is ultimately where we're going to go when we're totally done with our form. We're going to restrict it, we're going to protect it, and we're going to make it so that users can fill in the form fields, but they won't be able to modify anything else on the document. So this is what we're going to do just to quickly test. We're going to come under number 2 over here and check the box, and then we are going to drop down and select Filling in Forms. And then we're going to say, yes, start enforcing protection. We're not going to put a password because we're just testing right now. So we'll just click OK. And so right now, if I were to come down here and just type some numbers in for a phone number and hit tab, it's going to automatically format it in the way that we specified. So that is how you're going to enforce the number formatting on your forms. In this lesson, we are going to program dependent drop-down lists. And so we're going to use multiple level dependent drop-down lists. And so I'm going to show you how you're going to set that up. First, let's go ahead and stop protection. So when we enforced the formatting on our form fields, we restricted that so we could test it. Now all we have to do is click on stop protection from the restrict editing pane, and then we can edit our form field. All right, so let's go back, and I just want to show you real quick how the feature works with legacy tools if we want to clear our form out. So remember, when we come up here to legacy forms and the sheet is unprotected, so it's not enforced protection right now, we can click on reset form fields, and notice that phone number will reset. So we click on that, resets that phone number that we input in there. Now, one thing I know, I don't want my form fields to be in bold when people fill it in. So when I notice that, if I have a text field that is in bold format, I can click on the Home tab and uncheck the bold box. So you can make some formatting on your form fields if you choose, and all you have to do to change those is just select them and uncheck the bold if you don't want those to be in bold. So you can just go through your form before we test and check on those. Now let's jump to our dependent level drop-downs. So we know that we inserted drop-down lists for our location, department, and manager. And what we want to do is just program the drop-down lists in our first option, and that is going to be the location. So for location, I'm going to double click to open the properties on that drop-down list, and it opens up the properties box on the drop-down list form type. And so right here is where we're going to put our options, and I'm going to say home office and hit enter to add that to the list, and I'm going to use satellite office and hit enter to add that to the list. Now, right now, the only other thing I'm going to do is change the bookmark, and the bookmark is what we're calling this field. So this is what it's not a label or anything like that. It's just what we're going to code it or call it so that we can program some different features. So we're going to bookmark this. I'm going to call it DD for dropdown, and we're going to call it location. And I'm going to say first, since it's our first level of our dropdown. And I'm going to click OK. Now, I'm not going to program the different options for department and manager because I want those to be filtered dependent upon what the user selects in that home office dropdown. So in order to do that, I need to make this a macro-enabled document, and I need to add some VB code. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and save my form as a macro-enabled document. So we're going to go up to File and click Save As. Browse where you want to save it, name your file, and then in the file type, go ahead and drop down, and we're going to select the Word macro-enabled document. So I'm going to select that and click on Save. All right, now let's go up to our Developer tab and click on Visual Basic. Now when Visual Basic opens, just make sure that you're on your current project, and then what you're going to do is come up to Insert and select Module. That's going to insert the first module in here, and I've done that already, so I'm going to select this and show you the code that we have here. Now you can copy this code. It's going to be pasted in the description below this video, and I'm just going to show you where you would replace with your own coded bookmarks. So up here at the top, you can see that we have the DD department second. That's what we bookmark and labeled our department field. And then we are saying that that field is going to populate based on the location. So here's where we have that bookmark label for the first field, which is the location. And then we put the bookmark for that second field here and here. So you'll be able to replace that with your own bookmark labels for your fields. But what we're looking at here is it's saying that when the case of the location is home office, that the options that are going to be the filtered list that someone can select from the department are going to be sales, finance, and operations. But if the option for location is satellite office, then you'll see human resources, information technology, and marketing as the filtered options for the department dropdown. So that's the first level. And then when we want to program the next level, so we want the manager's name to be filtered based on whatever department is selected. So for that, we would come back up to insert, click on module, and it will insert a second module. And that I have pasted right here. And so again, this code for the second module will also be in the description below this video. And if you needed to have that next level dependent dropdown, this is what you would do. And this is where it's saying that DD Manager third is going to get populated based off of the DD Department second field. And so you're going to use that bookmark in all of these lines of syntax here. And so what this is saying is that if sales is the department that is selected, then the manager options are going to be Burton Guster or Doug Heffernan. But if finance is selected, the managers are going to be Jeff Bingham or Samantha LaRusso and so forth. So here's where you would build out all of your different options. And with this, you will have to build out the syntax for however many selective lists and options that you have available. You would just build it all out here. And if you need to add, you would just put your cursor here, hit enter, just use the same syntax, type a period, add, and then put in quotes the name, and you would be able to save that as part of your macro there. So I'm going to delete that out, and we're just going to come up and click on save. So once you have everything filled in, you'll just click save, and then you can actually close out of the VB editor. The next thing you're going to want to do is come over to the properties on the location field. So we're going to select that, click on properties, and where it says run macro on, we're going to make sure that we select this option for the department second field. So we're going to select that and click OK. And then for the department field, we're going to select that, click on properties, and we're going to say run macro on exit, and we're going to select the third option, the third field there. So go ahead and select that and click OK. Now we can test this out and see how it works. So if we were going up to restrict editing, we have our restrict editing panel over here. It is checked for filling in forms, and I'm going to say yes, start enforcing protection. We don't need our password because we're just testing. Just click OK. And now let's go and click on, for home office, let's click on satellite office instead. So when we come over to the department area for satellite office, we see our options of human resources, information technology, or marketing. So if I select information technology, I can come over to the manager and I see Jen Barber or Maurice Moss. And then if I come back over here and select home office again, I can come back over here and select sales, finance, or operations, and I can come and based on that selection, I can see Jeff or Samantha as one of our finance managers. So that's how you create multiple levels of dependent dropdowns. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to make a form field required. Let's go ahead and stop protection on our form so we can make some edits. We're going to come over and make requisition number a required field so people don't accidentally skip over it. I'm going to just select the field and come up to properties. And here we have regular text. We can format this as a number and select the number format, set that at 0, and that's just a number format that someone can plug in a number into that field. Now let's go ahead and bookmark this. Let's label it. We can name it rec for short. All right, and let's go ahead and click OK. So now that we have that labeled, let's come back up to our developer tab and click on Visual Basic. Now let's go ahead and insert a new module. And in this module, we are going to paste some code. And I'm going to include the code in the description below this video. So if you want to use the same one, you can just copy and paste it. And here you'll notice rec is what I named that field, and in these two places in the syntax of this code is where you would replace that with whatever you named the field that you want to make required. So that's how you would use this. And basically what it's saying is that the user does have to fill this in. If they happen to try to skip past that field, a pop-up window will pop up and tell them that they do have to enter something in. So let's go ahead and save this. And we'll close out of Visual Basic. Now let's go back into the properties of the form field. We'll select the form field, go to Properties, and where we're going to say Run Macro On, under Exit, let's go ahead and select Must Fill In, and then we'll click OK. Now we can test and see how this works. Let's go ahead and start enforcing protection. We won't put a password, we'll just click OK. And now what happens if I try to hit Tab and go out of that form field, this pop-up will pop up and tell the user that this field is required, please fill it in below. So it gives them the opportunity to fill in the requisition number and then click OK, and it will populate that as the requisition number. So that's how you can make form fields required using legacy forms. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can link either text, images, or a table to appear based on a drop-down selection. So just as a reminder, on our original form, we have this section called Interview Questions. And right now, there's nothing that shows. Everything is hidden. But as soon as a user selects a competency from the competency selection area, for example, commitment, if they hit Selected, and click Tab, then the question for the commitment competency box will come up so that interviewer can fill in and answer and type notes for the candidate based on that question during the interview. And so likewise, if the communication competency is selected, then that table will also appear. So that's the functionality that we're going to build today in this lesson. But before we do that on our form, I want to show you behind the scenes how this works so you'll have a good understanding of the syntax that we're using for this field code. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick look at this other document here. Now here I have some instructions that we're going to go over that will help you understand how we're going to put together the field code to make this work. And the long way of inserting the field code would be if you were to go up to the Insert tab in Microsoft Word and then come over to the text area, click on Quick Parts, and then select Field. This will open up a menu where you can scroll down and you'll see that there's an if, and then down further there's a ref. So this would be the long way of inserting that code. We're going to use keyboard shortcuts to do this and build out our syntax. So let's look at how to do that. I'm going to click Cancel here. And let's just go back up to our scenario where we want to just have certain text to appear. So not the table, not an image, but just some random text, whatever text we want to have appear on our form based on a drop-down list selection that a user selects. So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to insert field code starting with an if statement. And that if statement is going to include the ref, which is referencing the bookmarked field. And then there's an operator, meaning saying equals, and then we're going to say the drop-down list item. And if that's true or selected, we want this text to appear between these quotes. And if it's not true, then this text will appear between these quotes. So in this example, I have a drop-down box that only has two drop-down items. So in this example, when there's only two items to select for your drop-down, we can use this simple if statement. The syntax will populate if there's text that's true or false, and that's a good scenario that we can use for this example. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert that field code. We're going to reference status 2, which is what we've labeled or named our bookmark field in that field property. And then we are going to say equals, quotes, full time, and we're going to type exactly case sensitive the drop-down list item that we want to identify, and then the text in between quotes that we want to appear if it's true or selected, and then a space, and then another set of quotes, and then the text to appear if it's false. So in this case, if part-time is selected. So just to take a look at how this works, we're going to start enforcing protection on our form. We'll click OK. And we'll come up here to our full-time status. Now, the drop-down selection's up here, but take a look down in this area where I have area for text to appear. I'm going to go ahead and select part-time and hit tab. And notice that the part-time text now appears. If I come back up and select full-time again and hit tab, then FT text appears. So let's take a look at what this field code looks like. So I'm going to stop protection, and now I'm going to hit Alt Function F9 or Alt F9 on my keyboard. This is going to display the field code that I have typed in to this form. And notice down here we're saying if ref status 2 equals full time, then we want FT text appears, otherwise we want PT text appears. So that's what we have built in here. Now this works great if we just have 2 items in the dropdown, but what if we have multiple items and we want different text to appear depending on however many items? So in that case, we want to do a nested if statement. So if we scroll down, I've got an example here that we can take a look at. So in this example, I have a drop-down box. If I double click to open up the properties, notice that I have 3 different options: full-time, part-time, and per diem. And I've labeled this field status, and I've checked the box for calculate on exit. So I'm going to click OK. And so my if statement is going to read if ref status equals quotes full-time, then in quotes I want FT text to appear. I'm going to close the quotes. Then I'm going to insert another field code where it says if, and then we reference status, that same field, equals part-time, then we want PT text to appear in quotes. And then we insert another field code for if, and then we reference status equals quotes per diem, then we want PRN text to appear. Then those brackets are closed. There's 3 brackets to close to finish the syntax for this nested if statement. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes, start enforcing protection, and notice that the field code for the if statement is going to disappear once we enforce protection on the sheet. So I'll click yes. We'll just click OK. And here we've got our drop-down list. So if we select part-time and hit tab, it'll say PT text to appear. If we select full-time, hit tab, FT text to appear. And now if we select per diem and hit tab, then the PRN text appears. So that's how you would create a nested if statement if you have more than one item in your drop-down list selection. Now the cool thing is that you can also do this with images. So let's take a look at how that would work. I'm going to stop protection on the form, and I'm going to scroll down. All right, in this scenario, I've created a drop-down list for someone to select a manager's name. And based on whichever manager they select, we're going to have an image file of that manager's signature appear. And so this is how we would do this with an image. So I'm using a signature file. You can do any type of image or picture that you want to appear. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hit Control Function F9 or just Control F9 on your keyboard, depending on your keyboard. Now that is the keyboard shortcut to insert the field code. You cannot just type those squiggly brackets. You do have to use the keyboard shortcut that officially inserts this as field code. And then we're just going to type our if statement. So we're going to say if, and then we're going to hit Control F9 again. And now we're going to enter that ref statement. So we're going to say ref space, and then what we're going to do is enter the name of the bookmark of the field that we want to reference. And so if we forget what that is, we can double click to open that up. We see that we've bookmarked this field as manager, and we're going to click OK. And so now we know we want to place our cursor back down here, and we're just going to type manager. Oops. Now remember, if we have our caps lock on, we want to make sure it's case sensitive, so you have to type it exactly correct. So it's going to be manager. Now I'm going to move my cursor outside that first bracket and hit equals. And then I'm going to open up quotes, type a quotes, And this is going to say the first name of one of the managers, Carrie Heffernan. And then end quotes. So we're saying if that field equals Carrie Heffernan, now what I'm going to do is hit space and I'm going to type 2 quotes. I'm going to move my cursor back in between those 2 quotes. So my cursor is in between the next 2 quotes. And this is what we want to have appear. We're going to have a picture appear. So we're going to come up to our Insert tab, go to Pictures, this device, and we're just going to navigate to where we have our image file saved. We're going to select it and hit Insert. All right, now we are going to resize this image. We can scale it down by dragging it in. And we can use the rotation handle to straighten it out if we want to. Now notice that our image file is in between those 2 quotes where we had our cursor placed. Let's go ahead and place our cursor right after the quotes, but still inside of the field code bracket. And now we want our next if statement. If it's the other manager, we want a different signature or image file to appear. So now we're going to hit Control Function F9, and we're going to say if, and then Control Function F9 to enter the reference field again, REF. We're going to type manager. We're going to move our cursor over outside of that bracket, hit equals, and then we're going to say quotes, and then the other drop-down list selection, the name of the other manager, and hit quotes to close that. Now we're going to hit space and enter 2 quotes again, move our cursor back in between those 2 quotes, and insert our next image. Come up to Insert, Pictures, this device. We'll navigate to select our image and click Insert. Now let's resize that one. And then we can use our rotation handle to straighten that one out as well. All right, now let's test this out. We're going to go over to Yes, Start Enforcing Protection. We'll click OK. And notice that that area disappears. We come up here. We're going to select one of our manager's names and hit Tab. Then we'll have that image appear. If we come back and select the other manager and hit Tab, then that image will appear. So that's how you can link images to appear using this field code. So let's go back to our form now and create this for the table that we want to insert for the competency questions on our interview questionnaire. Now remember, in our previous lesson, we built our form out to include these tables. So we created these tables, and so they are sitting here in our Word document, but we want to have them hidden. So we really want them to be inside the field code. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be inserting these tables just like we inserted an image. We're going to be copying and pasting these tables into that field code in between those quotes. And then what I'm going to do is then delete these off the actual document. They'll be in the field code, so they'll only appear if the competency is selected by the user. So just to show you, as a reminder, we created these drop-down selections up here for the competency areas of commitment, communication, and decision-making. And so if we double-click to open the properties, we bookmarked this one, commitment, and it's either not selected or selected as the drop-down list items. We have calculate on exit checked, and I'm going to click OK. So same thing with communication. This one's bookmarked as communication. Click OK. And then decision making, we have bookmarked as decision making, all one word. Camel case, we have the D and the M capitalized. So we have to type that when we reference it. We have to type it exactly like that. So I'm going to click OK. All right, so what we want to do is just come over, hit enter. So we're going to place our cursor where we want to have our field code. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and hit our keyboard shortcut, which is Control F9 or Control Function F9, depending on your keyboard. So that's going to insert the field code there. We're going to say if, then hit Control F9, ref, space, and then we're going to type the name of the bookmark field. So we're going to type commitment. Now I'm going to move my cursor outside of that first bracket and hit equals. Then I'm going to type quotes, and then this is going to say selected, and then close those quotes. And that is the drop-down list selection that if that's selected, then I want this table to appear. So now I'm going to hit space. I'm going to hit quotes to open up a quote. And now that my cursor's there, now I'm going to select the table. I'm going to come over here to the corner. I'm going to select it so the entire table is selected, and I'm going to hit Control C to copy. I'm going to come back up here with my cursor inside the field code right after the quote and hit Control V to paste. And notice what that did was it inserted the commitment table, and it moved the end of the field code down here because of the size of the table. Now what I need to do now is close those quotes. So I'm going to type quotes down here, and that means that this table will show up when a user selects selected as a drop-down under the commitment drop-down box. And so the next thing I want to do now is go ahead and delete the actual table off of the form. So I'm going to come down here, select the commitment table that we copied, and I'm just going to hit backspace to delete that. And the next thing we want to do is add the code for the communication box. So I'm actually going to start a new field code here. I'm going to hit Control F9 or Control Function F9, and we're going to say if, and then hit Control Function F9 again, ref space, communication is the name of the next field. I'm going to bring my cursor outside of that first bracket, hit equals, open quotes, select it, close quotes, space, quote, and here's where we're going to copy the next one. So this is the communication box. We're going to select that, hit Control C, bring our cursor back up here, right after the quote, and hit Control V to paste. It inserted the table right there, and now all we have to do where our cursor is down here is close the quotes. And then we're going to place our cursor outside there. Now we can delete the communication. We just can select that, and we'll hit backspace to delete that. Now the last one we want to include is decision making, so we'll place our cursor right back up. We're going to hit Control Function F9 or Control F9. We're going to say if, then Control F9 again, ref space, this time decision making. All one word with capital D and M. And then we're going to bring our cursor outside of the ref bracket, hit equals, open quotes, select it, close quotes, space, open quote, select our decision-making table, Control C to copy, bring our cursor back up after the quote, hit Control V to paste, and then close those quotes down here. Now we can delete this. We'll select it, hit backspace to delete, and let's come back up here and we'll start enforcing protection and take a look at what this looks like. So we'll say yes, start enforcing protection so we can test this out. We'll click OK and scroll back up. Notice that everything is hidden since nothing is selected yet. So as soon as we select our commitment and hit Tab, our commitment box will appear. As soon as we select communication and hit Tab, the communication box appears. And then as soon as we select decision making and hit Tab, then decision making box appears. Now, one quick tip if you want to stop protection, if you ever need to see your field code, if you need to correct something or change it, then all you have to do is stop protection on the form. And then the keyboard shortcut is Alt F9 or Alt Function F9. And when I hit that, notice that I can now see all of the field code again. So I can come back up and I can edit that or change it if needed. So the keyboard shortcut to view your field code is actually Alt F9 or Alt Function F9, depending on your keyboard. And you want to hide it again, all you have to do is hit that again to toggle it. So Alt Function F9 or Alt F9, and then it will hide that code back again. So as soon as your sheet is protected, it automatically hides the field code for you, but if you do need to see it, you can. So this is a great way that you can configure your form to make either text, tables, or images appear based on a user's drop-down selection. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to make a form field repeat in your document. This is also helpful if you have not just a form, but maybe a template letter or a contract where you just want to enter someone's name up front at the top of the document, and there might be multiple places throughout the document where you want that name to appear. That's what I'm going to show you how to do. So let's go ahead and stop protection on our form here. And I'm going to scroll up and let's make the candidate name, I want that to appear at the bottom. So I'm going to select that field. I'm going to go to my Developer tab, click on Properties, and I'm going to go ahead and name this Candidate Name. And I'm going to click the checkbox that says Calculate on Exit and then click OK. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of my document here where I want that name to appear, and I'll put my cursor, couple of spaces, and I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to make sure that it's not bold. And what I want to do now is insert the field code. So again, the shortcut there is going to be Control F9 or Control Function F9, depending on your keyboard. Inserts the field code, and all we have to do is type ref, R-E-F, space, and then the name of the bookmarked field. So that's going to be candidate name. And remember, you have to type it exactly how you typed it into the bookmark, so the right case is important. So now that we have that set up, let's go ahead and click on Yes, Start Enforcing Protection so we can see how this works. We're going to just click OK because we don't need the password. So notice that your field down here disappears. You don't see it anymore. But if we come up here and we fill in the candidate name and we hit Tab, let's scroll down to the bottom of the document and notice that the candidate name automatically appears here at the document. In this lesson, we're going to look at how to create calculating form fields. We're going to do this by taking our legacy text form fields and we're going to format them as a number and bookmark them. And then we're going to use those bookmark fields in the math equation. The functionality to do this is helpful. For an example, if you were setting up an invoice template in Microsoft Word, you could set up the subtotal to calculate automatically, and then you could even have a grand total that calculates based off the subtotal and the tax. So let's take a look at how this will work in our current form. I'm going to go ahead and stop protection. And let's take a look over here at the area that we're going to focus on. We've got competency 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to have our interviewers rate the candidate that they're interviewing on a scale of 1 to 10. And then we want this overall candidate score to be the average of these scores. So we know we're going to want this equation to be competency 1 plus competency 2 plus competency 3 divided by 3, and that's going to give us the average score. So to do that, let's select our first competency form field and come up on our Developer tab and click on Properties. And where it says Type, let's drop down and select Number. For number format, we can use up to 2 decimals. We'll use that as our number format. And then be sure and check the box that says Calculate on Exit. So I'm going to check that box, and then I'm going to bookmark this. I'm going to call this Comp 1. And then I'm going to click OK. Now let's update the properties on the second one. We can double click to open the properties. We'll set this as a number. We can choose the format to 2 decimals. We'll bookmark this one, Comp 2. And then we're going to check the box to Calculate on Exit and click OK. And now let's do that for our third form field. Double click to open the properties. Drop down, select the number format to 2 decimals. We'll bookmark this one, Comp 3. And click Calculate on Exit and click OK. All right, so now we want to set up our calculating form field. So that is the form field right here. We're going to select this. We can double click to open the properties. And this time, instead of selecting number, we're going to come down and click on calculation. And notice that this field up here changes to expression with an equals. And this is where we're going to type our math equation. So we know we want to add those bookmarked fields together and then divide by 3. So I'm going to open parentheses, and then I'm going to type the name of the bookmarked field. So that was Comp 1 plus Comp 2 plus comp3. Close my parentheses and then divide it by 3. And then this time we are not going to check the box calculate on exit. We're going to leave that unchecked and then just click OK. All right, so now let's test out our calculation. We can come back up to our restrict editing on the developer tab. We have this restricted to filling in forms, and we'll say yes, start enforcing protection, just so that we can test this out. We won't put a password, we'll just click OK. And let's go ahead and type in our first score. And we'll hit tab, and we'll enter our next score, and hit tab and enter another score. And then hit tab. And notice that the overall score automatically calculates as the average of the 3 scores. Now I'm going to stop protection real quick, and I'm going to come up to my field up here for legacy tools, and I'm going to click on reset so that it will clear the numbers out. And then I want to show you just a real quick tip. If I double click back into the properties here, notice that in the expression, the math formula we used is using the number formatted bookmarked fields. Just note that you cannot use a calculation field in your formula. So if you happen to be using the invoice example, a subtotal might be a calculated field. And let's say you want to calculate the grand total on your invoice, you would not be able to use that subtotal calculated field in the math equation for your grand total. You would have to use the long formula to build that out. That's just a quick tip in case you are creating calculated fields in your form. You do have to use straight number formatted fields in your math equation. The next thing we want to do is add a submit button to the bottom of our form. This is going to allow our users to fill in the form, and then when they're done, they'll be able to click this button and email the form back to us as an attachment. And to do this, we're going to use an docx command button. So let's go ahead and place our cursor over where we want to insert the button. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to center my text, and I am going to go ahead and insert that command button. So let's go up to our developer tab, and let's drop down our legacy form fields over here and click on the docx command button. All right, now let's right click on the button and click on Properties. And over here, you're going to see the caption area. And here's where we can label our button. We could label it Click to Send, or if we want to just label it Submit, we can do that as well. All right, I'm going to click on Close out of those properties. And now let's go ahead and double click on the command button. This opens up the command button window in Visual Basic, and we're going to copy some code in here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the code that we're going to use, and I will paste this code in the description below this video so that you can also use this. And what this will do is it will allow the user, when they click the button, it will open up Microsoft Outlook as their email client, and it will create an email that will have an email address already programmed in there to send back to you. So these highlighted areas of the code here are areas that you would want to replace with whatever you need to put into your command button. So for example, you can have your own subject for the email, your own body of the email, and then you would put your own email address there so that you would receive that message with the attachment of the completed form. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it into our Visual Basic editor. All right, so I'm just going to hit Control V to paste, and I'm going to delete the extra syntax there at the top and bottom. All right, so here is where we would update that text when you use this for your own purposes. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in here. All right, and now let's go ahead and click on Save, and then close out of Visual Basic. We'll minimize this document. Now let's go ahead and test out our Submit button. Now notice over here that our button for starting enforcement of protection of our form is grayed out, and that's because we have our Design Mode button clicked. So just come over to your Developer tab and uncheck Design Mode, and then you'll be able to start enforcing protection on your form. We'll click Yes, Start Enforcing Protection. and we won't put a password. Now let's go ahead and just click on our submit button. And we have an email that pops up that's ready to go right to our email address. It includes the subject that we have programmed in the VB code, as well as the information that we have typed out into the body of the email. And it's going to send that as a Word attachment. Remember, you do have to have your document saved as a macro-enabled document file type in order for this to work. And also your users do have to use Outlook as their email client. But this is a great way for your users to be able to fill in their completed forms and send them back to you very easily with the click of just a few buttons. Now that our form is complete, we want to lock it for testing. So we've been doing this throughout the different lessons. On our developer tab, we've come over here to restrict editing, and it opens up this pane over here. We have the second box checked, and we have our drop down here selected to filling in forms. And so you notice when we say yes, start enforcing protection, it does ask us if we want to password protect it. That's up to you whether you want to put a password on there or not. You do have to remember that password in order to unlock your form. I'm just going to click OK since we're just testing with it right now. But notice when we do this that our form is now restricted, and the only thing we can do as a user accessing this document is to fill in the form fields. Notice that I can't click anywhere else and change anything or type anything into the form, but I can select the form fields and type information in. And if I hit tab, it takes me to the next form field in the document. I can tab or click on the form fields to access them and fill them in. Now, sometimes you might create a document that has a form on the first page, but you want the second page to be unrestricted. Maybe you want your users to be able to freely type in or edit something on that second page. You can either do it by page or by section, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So in our example down here, remember, we have our competency section where we can select different competencies to appear in our form, and then we want the interviewers to ask these interview questions and then type notes of the candidates' responses. And so if I select a couple of these and have those appear down here, unfortunately, I don't have the ability to type in those boxes when my form is completely locked. So instead, what we're going to do is lock most of the form, but we're going to leave that one section unlocked. And here's how you're going to do that. I'm going to stop protection right now. And what I want to do is come up and I'm going to click on the Home tab. And I'm going to click on this icon over here. It's the show hide icon. And when I click on that, it's going to show where I can place my continuous page breaks. And the reason I want to do this is I want to place them right above and below the section that I want to leave unrestricted. And so I can see where I have those areas using the show hide button. And now I'm going to come up to the layout tab. And under the layout, the page setup area, click on breaks. There's a drop down that says breaks. And if you wanted to do a page break, you would put in the page break and then leave one page unrestricted. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the continuous break. All right, so I'm going to place my cursor where I want to have that break. And I'm going to come up to the layout tab, click on the breaks drop down and select continuous. That's going to add the section break right here, and that's going to be my first break in the document. Now I'm going to come down to the end of the interview question area, and that's going to be right above the candidate score. So in fact, I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to move my cursor up in this area, and this is where I want to place the break that will end that continuous section break. So now I come back up to layout, breaks, and select continuous break again. All right, so that's going to put a section break right there below that box. Now let's go ahead back to the Home tab and click on the show hide icon to hide everything again. Now let's come back over to the restrict editing area. We have our box checked for filling in forms, but notice now that there's a hyperlink called select sections that appears. And let's go ahead and click on that. And now we have the ability to uncheck one of these sections or areas. And remember, we put 2 continuous breaks in there, which divided our form or our document up into 3 different sections. So I know I want section 2, that middle section, to be unrestricted. So I'm going to uncheck that box, and then I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to say, yes, start enforcing protection. And we'll just click OK for no password. Now let's come back up. And so now up here we can select our different form fields and fill those in because they're protected up here. And now if I come down to the interview questions area, I can actually place my cursor down here in the box and type whatever I may need to. And then I can go back down to the bottom of my form and go back to just filling in the form fields on the rest of my form. And that's how you would lock only part of your document or a certain page of your document and restrict that to filling in forms. Now that we have our form created and all of our form fields programmed, let's go ahead and test out our form thoroughly before we distribute it. We're going to go ahead and click on yes, start enforcing protection. Now remember that we had put continuous section breaks in the previous lesson. We're going to leave that middle section unprotected. I'm going to click OK, and then we'll say yes, start enforcing protection. I won't put a password since we're just testing, but we do want to go ahead and test out our form fields now. So we want to do a thorough test, so we're going to click on all the fields and enter in our information. Now remember, our form field for our phone number is going to force the user into a specific format. So if we just type in a random phone number and hit tab, it will automatically format that number for us. And then I'm going to put in an email address, and then we'll check one of the work preferences, and we'll put in a job title and our requisition number. And then here we have our dependent drop downs. So let's go ahead and click on Satellite Office. Our Satellite Office gives us either Human Resources, Information Technology, or Marketing. And the Marketing is going to give us either Kelly or Chael. So you want to go through and thoroughly test all your dependent drop downs, select all the different options and variables just to make sure that all of those are working for you. Now down here is our competency selection area. So let's go ahead and select all of them and hit tab and make sure that they appear below. So there's our commitment box. Select and hit tab for communication. There's our communication box. And let's select decision making. So now all 3 of our competency boxes are showing up here on our form. And so now we can come up, and remember, we unprotected this middle section so that users should be able to type in their responses here below. All right, great. So we can type into these boxes, and we'll just type into this other one down here. And that's great. So that's working. And now when we come back to our other section of the third section of the form that should be restricted, we're able to fill in our forms again. So we'll put in our candidate score, and we should see the overall score calculate. I'm going to hit tab. And when I hit tab again, that overall score will calculate for me. Now I'm going to come down here, and under interviewer name, I can put my name. And notice that the candidate's name is automatically appearing since we filled in the candidate name up at the top. So that repeating form field is also working. And then we can type in any notes down here. All right, and then you can also test your submit button by clicking it and making sure that the email pops up, that the user is able to send that email as an attachment. And that looks good. So all I would have to do now is send that off, and that would return a completed form back to me. All right, I'm going to close out of there. All right, so in testing my form, the only thing that I noticed that I want to change or fix is the formatting. So I didn't necessarily want the responses to be typed in bold, so I'm going to go back and fix that on my form. So now all I have to do is click on Stop Protection. I'm going to scroll back up to the top of my form here, and I'm actually going to come onto my drop down, and I'm going to click on the Reset Form Fields button, and I'm going to come down and select these down here where I don't want them to be bold, all you have to do is select the form field and fix your formatting. So we're going to uncheck the bold there. We're going to click here and uncheck the bold there. And maybe we want this overall candidate score to be out to 2 decimal places. So we can double click on that to open up the properties. And we're going to select our number format and bring that out to 2 decimals and then click OK. All right, so that is going to help us fix some of these things on our form field that we want to. The testing is so important because that's when you're going to find some of these things that you're going to want to go back and fix, and you're able to do that before you distribute your form. And when you're ready to distribute your form, you've saved it as a macro-enabled document if you happen to be using some of the features that require macros. And then all you have to do is email it out to anyone who you need to fill it in, or you can post it out on a shared drive so that people can access the form. They are going to want to access it using Microsoft Word so they can use all the features and functionality that you've programmed into your form. Now in the next video, we're going to take a look at how you can gather and get results back and import all of that data into an Excel spreadsheet using Power Query. Let's take a look. Now that we have our form field distributed and people have started filling in our forms and sending them back to us, we want to be able to extract that data and import it into Excel. So we can do that since we've used legacy form fields. I'm going to show you how we are able to save this as a plain text file that we can then import and set up into Excel using Power Query. All right, let's take a look. This is a completed form. Let's just say I filled this in and it represents a completed form that a user might have emailed back to me using that submit button. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to File and I'm going to come down to Options and I'm going to click on Advanced. And now I'm going to scroll down toward the bottom. And you'll notice this area that says Preserve Fidelity when sharing this document. And you're going to want to check the box here that says Save Form Data as Delimited Text File. We're going to check that box and then click OK. And now we're going to save it as a plain text file type. So let's go to File, Save As. Now I set up a specific file folder where I'm going to save all of these documents. So you'll want to set up a specific file folder somewhere on your computer, and we're going to save this next one. And click Save. And then on this window, click OK. All right, now let's go ahead and open up Microsoft Excel. We're going to open up a blank document. All right, and real quick before we get into it, I want to show you on the File folder in the File Explorer where we have that folder saved. All right, so we have 2 files out here. I'm going to temporarily move one out and we're going to move it back so I can show you how you're going to be able to add additional responses as you get them in here and then refresh your data and have the data populate in Excel automatically. So let's just take one of these out for now and I'll show you how this works. All right, so we're in Microsoft Excel. I want you to come up to the Data tab and click on Get Data. We're going to say From File. And then over here, notice there is a From Text or CSV. Since we saved our document as a plain text, you would be able to import that using this feature here, but that would just be one by one. So what we want to do is set it up to come from a file folder. So then whenever we do save a new completed document out into that folder, all we have to do is refresh our data and it will add that data into our Excel spreadsheet automatically. So we're going to click this option for From Folder. And now we're going to navigate to our folder and select it and hit Open. All right, down here where it says Combine, I'm going to drop down and click on Combine and Transform Data. All right, this window pops up and now I'm going to click OK. Now, the Power Query Editor will open up after a few minutes. It does take a little while to establish all the connections and set things up, so just wait for it to open and you'll see the Power Query Editor here. Now from here, we can update our columns. We only have to do this the one time, our first time that we're setting this up, but if we come over here and double click, we know that this is our interview date. And I can go through each of these columns. I can double click and rename them. We know that the column 2 is candidate name. And our candidate's phone number. And so forth. So we can go through and relabel all of those columns. We only have to do that once and then it's done. So let's go ahead and come up to close and load. Once you're done setting it up just how you want it, you'll come up to close and load, drop down and select close and load. And notice that now all of the filled in fields on our form will populate here on our spreadsheet. And so the nice thing is that if we want to then filter by a department, a location, a manager, or do a pivot table on any of our data, select the highest ranked candidate, any of those things that we can do now that our data is in Excel, we're able to do that. So let's take a look at how we can, if we're getting multiple responses back, let's drop those into our folder and how we can refresh and add that to our list. So let's go ahead back into our File Explorer and add that other completed form back into our linked folder. I'm going to cut that and put it back into our linked folder, which is the interview responses. So this is where you would save your additional form fields as you receive them. All right, so now that we have our next completed form saved out there, let's minimize that. And then we just come back into our Excel spreadsheet and let's go over to our data tab. And we're going to click on the drop down where it says refresh all and then click on refresh. And notice our new saved form is out there and has also populated onto our spreadsheet. So this is how you would be able to collect multiple responses, save them into a linked folder, and use Power Query to automatically load that data into an Excel spreadsheet for you. I really hope you've enjoyed this course and that it's helped you figure out ways to use Microsoft Word to create your forms, surveys, and questionnaires. There are other solutions out there to create forms like Excel, Adobe Acrobat, and also online form builders like Microsoft Forms, Google Forms, and even JotForm. If you're interested in learning how to use those other solutions to create fillable forms, be sure and check out the playlist on my YouTube channel for creating fillable forms. You can visit my website, SharonSmithHR.com. Thank you so much for joining me for this course, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next one.